In 1984, there was no such thing as a professional athlete at 16. I was too young to know that I was not supposed to win Wimbledon. Everybody doubted, including my coaches and my friends, and they prepared me already, don't be too upset. I said, hold on, let me play. And I played to win. Ever since that moment, I trust in myself. I thought I have this now for years to come. And that was obviously a foolish mistake. At 19, I lose the second round to an Australian.
You make mistakes, I warn you.
Sometimes even you, Boris Becker, lose at Wimbledon. You're human, you're a man, you're not always perfect. I learned this lesson early. I'm a better man today for it. You were allowed to be free. You were allowed to make mistakes without being slaughtered a minute later on Twitter. I think that's the problem for the younger generation. When I coach now and I talk to the juniors, is that always play until the end, because otherwise you don't know how good you can be if you give up before. Ultimately, you have to find your own way in life. It's a journey. Enjoy the process of finding out who you want to be, what you want to do. You can only be the best you can be.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... Look, I won't lie. When I heard Boris Becker was coming to London Real Studios, I was starstruck, because when I was a kid in San Diego, I used to watch his epic battles at Wimbledon with guys like John McEnroe and Pete Sampras. And just think about it. When he was 17 years old, he was watched by 700 million people from around the world. And I don't know if a kid that young can handle that status, that money. And we watched Boris's life and his career go up and down, bankruptcies and babies by different women. But he's still here and he's still fighting. He still commentates for Wimbledon, and I love his energy and his spirit. I love how he keeps it real, and I love how he fights for what's most important. So I know you're gonna enjoy this time with Boris. We really got on really well. We might even go hang out and have a beer together one day. But here is Mr. Boris Becker. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Boris Becker, the former world #1 tennis player, Olympic gold medalist, coach, and commentator. At 17, you became the youngest Wimbledon champion in history, a record you hold to this day, and over a 16-year playing career, you won 6 Grand Slam titles. As a coach, you led Novak Djokovic back to the top of world rankings in 2014, and you went on to hold all 4 Grand Slam titles simultaneously. You now commentate on tennis around the world and have been part of the BBC's Wimbledon coverage since 2003. Boris, welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much. I could have listened to it a lot longer.
Is it nice to hear
those? I like
those?
the flowers in the morning, yes.
I hear that as you get older, it's kind of nice to think about kind of your career and the things you've accomplished. Is that true? Does it get sweeter with time?
Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you forget that you did win a few things, as a player and as a coach, because you always think about the next tournament or the next goal or the next match. But only when you look back a little bit, and that's why I enjoyed your introduction, is that I did a few things in tennis nobody's done before, and it's good to hear that sometimes. Yeah.
Right, but when you're in that, you're always thinking about the next tournament. I've got to keep my #1 ranking.
Yeah,
Wimbledon's coming up, Australian's coming up, New York's coming up. I mean, I guess you have to live in that kind of moment of trying to make yourself better all the time.
Yeah, it's a very intense lifestyle because you're only rated as good as your last match in a way. It doesn't matter how many you've won before. and who knows what's going to happen in the future. So the last match is important, and once that's over, it's the next match. And even after Wimbledon finally win it, there's a great ceremony afterwards, and there's a champions dinner, and everybody puts on a tuxedo. But you think on the Monday morning, okay, after maybe having a cup of coffee, okay, what's next? Right. And the lifespan of an athlete is not that long. If it's very successful and healthy, it's 10 years. It's not that long. So every year is important.
Mm. Tell me about you. You live in England now, full time. Why did you make that choice? I mean, you've lived all around the world. You're from Germany.
Yeah,
why here? People ask me why I live here.
Yeah.
But why? Why you?
My friends call me a Londoner by now. I've been here for a few years now. I was in Switzerland before, and I had a Sunday morning breakfast with all my kids. I have various different kids from different relationships. 4 children.
Right.
And I said, listen, where you all would like me to call home? And I said, the only thing it has to be Europe. Now, our family language is English. It's not German, or it's not French, or it's not Spanish. And so everybody pretty much within a minute said London. And London was always close to my heart because I loved Wimbledon. It was my special place, and I have a lot of friends in London, and my English is okay. I can manage. So London was a natural choice for everybody to say, yeah, call this the Becker home, and that was, as I said, many years ago. And I feel respected in London. I can go under the radar in London. I like the football. I like the politics of it. I like the fact that within an hour or two, you're in Berlin, you're in Rome, you're in Paris, you're in anywhere in Europe within 2 hours. And even if you fly to Miami, it's just over the water. It's 6 hours. New York is close. So I call this the capital of the world for many years. Yeah.
Hmm. And like you said, you can fly under the radar, which you can't necessarily do in Germany.
No.
And it's cosmopolitan enough, but not too crazy like New York City.
Yeah.
And you've always had a place for this in your heart.
Yeah, I like what in particular London stands for. It's really open-minded. It doesn't matter what color you have and what God you believe in, and there's a section for everybody here, and everybody gets along. Now the times they are changing a little bit. I think Brexit affects the situation. The political landscape is changing. We live in uncertain times. I'm a foreigner here. I have a German passport only, so we watch the news more than ever before. Obviously, there's now. I don't want to get into the Brexit discussion, but now there's a delay until October the 31st for a final decision, leaving or not, and it affects people like me because things will be different.
Mm. But do you think ultimately all the Europeans will still be able to live here? And all of that will still be okay.
Well, I hope so. I honestly, talk to my friends, and for the first time ever, we think is London still the place for us in the future? Do we have to, change our homes? And it's something you don't want to do because you only have one home, right? Obviously, I wasn't born here, and I was born in Germany, but I've adopted to the London lifestyle a lot. And it's for the first time in a long time we have to think about what the future will bring for us.
Yeah. Well, I hope we figure all this out because I think it's an incredible city. I'm obviously an American, but I'm here. I have my British passport.
Oh, you have a British passport?
I do. Yeah. I got that a long time ago just in case.
Good.
I'm an engineer by training, so we do the fail safes. But again, open-minded. It's always been a trading city, and I think trading cities traditionally always had different people coming in.
Yeah.
And, you have to be open-minded to do business, and I agree. It's a great town. I was wondering if you could take me back to where you grew up. And as a point of reference, my mom took me on the American-European vacation in the 80s. And so we went to Germany. I remember going to Dusseldorf and Aachen and Munich, saw the Neuschwanstein.
Yeah.
We also took a train through East Germany into Berlin, and we went to East Berlin, and I could never forget that, even as a young man. And I was wondering if you could tell me what it was like to grow up in Germany, in West Germany in the 70s and 80s, things that we might not even think about that were a part of your childhood or a part of the culture. What was it like?
It was the good old days. When you mention West Germany, if I talk to my kids and some of my younger friends, and I say, well, I'm from Leimen, close to Heidelberg in West Germany on purpose. What do you mean West Germany? Was there ever a thing called West Germany? I said, well, for a long time, the Iron Curtain was right through Germany, through Berlin. Berlin was divided, East Berlin and West Berlin, and now it's obviously our capital. But 15 years ago, not that long ago, it was divided, and they can't believe that the world really changed, for my taste, for the better. Only 15 years ago, and it's actually longer. It's 25 years ago.
Yeah,
25 years ago, and it was different in the sense that you felt very safe. It was wealthy even then. You could walk the streets at night. Again, it was before the internet, before mobile phones. Life was very different. But I come from a very nice family, and I was able to do sports. I was obviously in school, and there were no restrictions really to my dreams. And partly the reason why I became successful later, because I was allowed to dream even when I was 10, 12 years old. And
is that something that your parents allowed you, or was that even the West German culture to allow people to dream?
Both. I think it was, we can have started a discussion of was it you or was it a choice you were given? You mentioned early on that I won Wimbledon 17. Well, I was given the choice to play tennis when I was 4 or 5 years old, because I was brought up in an environment that was safe and healthy and had a little bit of money. Now, if you're born and raised in the wrong town, in the wrong country, you would not win Wimbledon 17, not because you're good enough, but because you were brought up in the wrong environment, for example, not your fault. Right. So given all that, and when you get older, you do look back a little bit. I'm thankful to my parents and to my older sister for allowing me to dream. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about it.
I think it's important to emphasize this concept of a dream, because these days with Google and YouTube and all the social media, you can always see someone that embodies your dream. Look, this guy did it, this person did this. But back then, you really couldn't see it. You couldn't visualize someone doing this. Maybe there was a magazine, or maybe if you caught something on TV before it moved to another show, you could see it. But there wasn't a lot of point of references, not a lot of kind of people that could mentor you along the way. I mean, you really had to kind of sell this from scratch to your parents, right?
Yeah, and maybe that was an advantage that I didn't know. Maybe sometimes an advantage that you can't Google things. I had this discussion with my second son. He's 19 now, but a few years ago, he obviously has a weather map. And then, he looks at his phone like most 16-year-olds and says, Dad, we're in London, it's raining today. And I look up at the sky and I say, it's blue sky, it's sunny. No. In my app, on Google, on my weather app, it says it rains in London. I said, son, look up at the sky. No. Google is right. It has to be right. And I'm thinking, son, you're losing your mind now. We're standing underneath the sky, and it's warm and it's sunny. And he looked at me and looked at his phone and said, well, I don't understand. So younger generations, they grow up with this. Everything they read on the internet, they believe is true, even though they've never been anywhere. I think that's a problem for the younger generation. And so when I was 15, I couldn't Google and I couldn't find out about this and that. I had to do it to believe it. And I think that gave me an advantage.
Interesting. So by not knowing anything, it doesn't restrict you. You just think, I want to win Wimbledon.
Yeah, and it was almost to the point where I was too young to know that I was not supposed to win Wimbledon. If imagine a 17-year-old right now, he's in the semifinal, he's about to break my record. He gets from the whole world so many messages that what he's about to do will be a record. Therefore, he might not going to do it because he gets nervous or he feels depression, all that. When I did that, I hardly spoke English. There was no internet. I just went about my things, and all of a sudden, I win the tournament. So, in a way, it was easier then than it's now.
Okay.
I mean, in football, you see a talented 17, 18-year-old, then in a big club wants to buy him for, I don't know, £100 million for a 17-year-old. You must be kidding. But this is the world we live in.
What does that tell you when people are spending that kind of money?
Yeah, you lose your borderlines. You lose value for things. You have no idea for concept or time because everybody tells you what's right and what's wrong.
It's almost like people live in the internet reality and then kind of their own reality.
Yeah.
And back in your day, all you had was your mind. And now...
Yeah, and my parents and my
parents.
education and my
Yeah.
school and my friends. But again, growing up in West Germany, to drive to Frankfurt, which was the closest airport, was like a big deal. Now you don't even think about it. You go to the airport and you fly from A to B. But again, it's different times, and you take things for granted now that they weren't certain 20 years ago.
Looking back on that 13, 14-year-old Boris, what was that guy like? And how were you able to put all these pieces together, to make it to Wimbledon at 17? I mean, I would guess that one left instead of a right turn for a few of those years might have stopped that happening.
Yeah, I was always involved in sports in general. Obviously tennis was the number one sport, but I played football, basketball, I swam, I skied. So my parents allowed me to do various different sports, and my trainer even then said, don't become a one-sport idiot. You have to practice your whole body, you have to practice your mind. So obviously you have to be careful not to get injured, but you have to do that anyway. So I was allowed to participate in various different sports, and I think that also gave me the joy of playing tennis, because I wasn't playing every single day 4 or 5 hours, and everything that mattered was tennis. I think it would have tired my mind a little bit and my fascination for the sport. So again, looking back, a great coaching environment, through the federation. My local coach, he was named Boris as well. He was from Yugoslavia. Again, back in the day, it was called Yugoslavia. Now you go Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro. Where is he from? Well, back in the day, he was from Yugoslavia, right? And I think that made it easier for transition. It made it easier to go from the juniors to the seniors. Yes, at 16, I asked my school principal for a 2 years leave of absence because I wanted to become a professional sportsman. Now, in 1984, there was no such thing as a professional athlete at 16. And so the school principal looked at me and said, are you sure? I mean, what happens if you break your knee or your ankles? Or what happens if you don't win? And I, well, that's true, but I was told I was pretty good. I'm one of the best juniors already, and so I just wanted to give it a try for 2 years. Let's see what happens. The same principal asked me for an interview a few weeks after Wimbledon, where I just won my first time. And then I came to the school. There were thousands of fans outside, television stations everywhere, but he must have missed it. So for about 30 minutes, he still convinced me to go back to school in case the tennis didn't work out. So I told him, listen, I just won a little tournament in the north, in London, called Wimbledon, and so far it's going very well. But I come back next year for you, and then we have this conversation again. And then obviously he got the message, he asked me a few more questions and so forth. So it didn't occur to him that I just became the youngest Wimbledon champion.
Right, because he wasn't on the internet.
He wasn't on the internet, he didn't like the sport, he didn't like tennis, no shame on him.
Right.
He just had more important things to do, you can't blame him. It was just, those were the times.
Were you an arrogant kid? Were you difficult?
I hope not. I don't think so. I always liked my sport because of the competition. I'm a competitive guy. I like to play. And for me, yes, the prize money was good, but at 17, 18, money didn't matter. And even the trophy didn't matter. It was, well, I've beat the other guy. That was great. So that was always my incentive in anything I did. It was, I want to get into that fight. I want to get into the match, and let's see what happens. That's the reason I played.
And what is it about tennis? Why is that the sport that fascinates people and allows you to go in and beat another man?
Well, first of all, it's 1-to-1. Which is difficult at times, because in football you even win if you get changed by the manager after 75 minutes. In tennis, you have to play the first ball and you have to play the last ball, so it's all your responsibility, which I must have liked, otherwise I wouldn't have felt comfortable. I felt that it was in my hands, and the only thing I had to do was beat the other guy across the net. Now, that's easier said than done, but something within me felt comfortable into this one-to-one situation. Even now, and I don't mind. I'm enjoying this conversation, sort of a tennis match a little bit, and it's one-to-one. And I love my teammates in Davis Cup, and I love to be in a team. But even in a team, most of the time they would make me the leader because I'm supposed to hit that winning shot, or I'm supposed to hit that penalty. And I think it's just something within my DNA that feels comfortable doing that. It's not something I want to all the time, but it became natural then, and it's natural now.
And why tennis? I mean, when you look at tennis, it's such a strange game. Like if aliens came down here and they looked at all of our games, they'd be like, okay, you're on grass, you wear white, there's this net. I mean, this is something that was created centuries ago, right? It was real tennis, I think, originally. There's a court actually by the Chelsea Harbor things. They have one of the few real tennis. And they used to play it in Pall Mall, and the kids would knock the ball off roofs of buildings, and then it became lawn tennis, right? Why is it such a popular sport? I mean, it fascinates people.
Well, at the Queen's Club, they have real tennis courts, indoor, smaller racket, much smaller court, different rules. And then it was originated, believe it or not, by the French, because it was called jeu de pomme. Pomme, apple, tennis ball and apple, sometimes you can say it's the same thing, even though it doesn't taste the same. So that's how it originated, and then the English took it over, and it became real tennis. And even now you have competitive real tennis players. There's a tour around the world. Obviously it's not that televised, and it's the prize money, I'm sure, is different. But you still have the game, and it's a complicated game.
Yeah.
It's a game of skill, tactics, strategy. Yes, you have to be fit, and you have to play a long time, but it's a very mental game with many rules, and thankfully it became one of the most popular sports in the world. But it's a complicated game. Yeah,
that's the real tennis. And then
even tennis now. I mean, tennis
now.
The way they count 15, 30, 40. Why not 1, 2, 3? Advantage Federer or break point Nadal. All these names for things are unusual. Then you have an umpire, you have linesman. Obviously nowadays with technology you have the hawk eye and so forth. Then it's the only sport in the world where during the exchange the people have to be quiet. You think, why? There are 10,000 fans, and Federer hits a great return, and Djokovic hits a drop shot. You want to applaud while they're playing. No, players are bothered by it. You can scream before and after. Why? No sport has that, for example, but those are the rules.
Very English, isn't it?
It's very English. Yeah. and then with the white, I wish there'll be more tournaments with white, because it just looks better. Some of the manufacturers are overdoing it with their style and the coloring and the shape of the shirts and the skirts for the ladies. I think it's sometimes. I think they should be a lot stricter than what they are now. But this is a sign of the times. It's called democracy.
Right. Wimbledon is still all white, right?
They stuck to the rules. Then I think the rule is 90% white. So if the coloring is a bit darker, or if the socks are not completely white, I think it's okay. But I think the rest of the gear have to be white. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I like on the grass, on the green. It just looks better. It's just a nicer picture.
It does look better.
Yeah.
It's also a performance art. I mean, everyone is watching you, and you always like that aspect of it, right?
It comes with the territory. A tennis court it's sort of a theater play, where you have a stage and there's two performers, and then there's the audience, and you also play for the audience. The audience is very important, and if you play in front of an empty stadium, you don't perform as well. Even though maybe millions are watching on television, you don't see that. You don't feel that. So you want to feel the audience, you want to feel the applause, you want to feel the people reaction to it after you hit a double fault. So players are depending a lot on the atmosphere of the fans and the spectators. So when it's a full house and you're a good performer, you want to play better for them.
How can you get the audience on your side?
By playing real, by being honest on the court. They quickly get when you fake something, or when you complain too much, and when you don't give an effort. I think they and then obviously you have a reputation for it as well. So once you get to a final, if We've won 5 or 6 times already. So the buzz around the club is that, well, this guy always tries hard, or this guy is diving, or this guy is this and that. So that plays a role, because you want the audience on your side, because they make a difference.
They will help you win that game.
They do. Yeah.
And you were known in like those 80s games for just going for it, right? Diving on the courts.
I was the aggressive type, yeah.
Was that part of that because you wanted to win? Was it also you like to be a showman? Like, what was that?
No, I think fundamentally, I wasn't the fastest mover. I was quite big and heavy. So with some of the balls, I just couldn't get there with my feet, and I didn't want to give up. So I had to find another way of reaching a volley, which was then, I would dive myself to the left, or even on the baseline sometimes. I just couldn't let go of a ball.
And tell me about the mental game. That must play mental tricks on your opponent when you are diving for things that they just assumed were gone. And then, who is this kid? Who is this kid? I can't beat him. How do you start this whole mental game? And does it depend on the player you're playing? And is it always something you focus on?
I was very young, so I don't think there was a strategy of impressing the other guy by diving for it. I think it became natural, and then obviously after you win, you feel like that worked. Then you talk with your coach about it, you talk with other players, and they tell you, well, it's difficult to play you because you're such an imposing figure. And I said, why? I'm just being myself. I just want to be within and be myself and do the best I can. Well, that alone is imposing. And also the fact that when I coach now and I talk to the juniors, is that always play until the end. Most players today, they're down a set and a break, they put their shoulders down, the racket is down, and they have given up already, even though there's another 20 minutes to go. So the great players of today, they always finish the match the way they have started it. And you never know what happens at the end. The guy gets nervous, you get a good call, there's an injury, who knows? There are a lot of matches I won at the end where I thought I couldn't at the beginning, because I was able to finish the match on my own terms. And I think that's about attitude, it's about concentration, it's about what's the purpose of going to the court, is win the match.
And you keep your game face on the whole time, even between breaks.
I was temperamental. I mean, I screamed around, I broke records. The older I get, the more even keel I became, the more relaxed I became. But if you're really frustrated as a tennis player, you can't hold it in the whole match. So if I coached today, I said, well, let it out one time. If you break a record, you're going to pay a fine. And I'm sure your record company is not happy, but you got to go back to concentration afterwards, because obviously you want to finish the match on your own terms. So at 17, 18, 20, I was a bit more temperamental than I was at 25.
Okay, and you're all swearing in German too, which is...
I learned to pick up the English language when I played the likes of McEnroe and Connors, believe me. And they taught me things that nobody ever taught me. So I quickly used some of the words that they used, not really understanding what it means, but it sounded cool. So that's why I started to swear in English.
Okay, I want to get to those guys definitely shortly. So 17, the tournament you watched as a kid on television, you're at Wimbledon and you win. And the whole world is watching. And again, just to kind of educate people here who were born in this internet generation, now with the internet, you can watch anything you want. Back then, everyone was watching a few things. Yeah. And during Wimbledon season, pretty much most of the world is paying attention to this thing. So, you're being watched by tens of millions of people. Yeah. That's an incredible fame moment that I don't think anyone can understand today. I don't care how big you are on Instagram, you're never as big as you were when you win Wimbledon.
No, they say the numbers of the Wimbledon final was 800 million.
800 million.
Watched around the world. You talk in Commonwealth, you talk India, you talk Asia, you talk Africa, you only had it on 1 or 2 channels. It was on BBC One, or it was on the number 1 channel in that particular country, because there was no private TV, there was no pay TV, there was no internet TV. I mean, think about it. Yeah. It was just on Sunday afternoon, what you wanted to do. Well, it was a Wimbledon final. If you liked the sport, you were watching it, and so were millions around the world. So you can't even imagine, if I would have known beforehand, I would have probably got nervous. But that was the beauty of the innocence youth, is that sometimes you're not aware of the things you're doing. And I think that is taken away from the younger generation today, is that they're too aware of what they're doing and the consequences of it. And so I think we had it easier then than the 19-year-olds of today.
Because you really couldn't conceive of all this stuff.
You were allowed to be free. You were allowed to make mistakes. You were allowed to express an opinion without being slaughtered a minute later on Twitter.
Right. Okay. And that makes people different, makes them behave different.
It makes them restricted. It makes them reserved. It not makes them express their real opinions because they're afraid of the reaction.
Right. You once said pressure only affects people who find they're not prepared. Is that the way you felt at Wimbledon? Did you feel the pressure?
I'm fascinated with the word pressure because I never understood it anyway. You know, traveling around the world, obviously you have a different idea of pressure now than back in the day. But for me, pressure, people have nothing to eat and nothing to drink and can't sleep at home. They have real pressure. The rest of us are born in the lap of luxury. Sometimes it's a bit better and sometimes a bit worse, but we always have a bed to sleep in and food and water. So, and even back in the day when I was playing, obviously I was younger, so I felt, why pressure? I can only be the best that I can be. And if that means I would lose that match, I'd be pissed off about it, but I will not, my life is not going to change because I have no regrets. Sometimes there's somebody better. So the pressure opponent was taken away from that because I can only do the very best that I can. And if I lose, I lose. Thankfully, I won more than I lost, but that was the attitude I always had.
You have to have that in tennis, right? Because there's so many matches. If you try to remember one or get caught up in one, if you live in the past, you'll never be able to be a champion.
No, you have to be on that moment. You know, it happens now. And now means now. Now means the next point. Now means 15 love. And again, there are ways to prepare for it. You know, you have to concentrate, and even that needs practice. You know, you can't have 1,000 things on your mind and getting ready for Wimbledon finals. So you're in your own confinement with a small group of people, and you mentally prepare what's about to happen. Really, of finding your own concentration, coolness, stillness. You want to be within, and then obviously you've already won a couple of matches, so you must be doing something good. You know, it's not like the first match, you don't know where you are, so you already feel good about your performance, and then you just gotta, you know, it's something to do with breathing techniques and just, you know, now they call it yoga. Back in the day they called it stretching. And it's some ways of finding your inner sanctuary is through that, because once you get there, you are yourself, and then hopefully you're good.
And you figured this out on your own. You were doing your own version.
Through books, through coaches, through other players. You know, you always find ways to improve your concentration and your ability to play well. And a lot of it is you.
Did you visualize the win before you went out?
Yeah, it's part of the concentration to think about lifting the trophy, think about, you know, the match, and just mentally getting fixed within the match already, even though it hasn't started.
Wow. All right, so you win at 17. Go back to school, you convince the headmaster that maybe you...
Another year, give me another year.
One more year, we'll see if you can make it.
It's a true story. And there are thousands of people in front of the school. But he was an intellectual,
Is that a German thing as well, conservative thing?
Maybe a little bit, maybe, you know,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so he saw the 10,000 people outside the school, said, okay, we're going to give you another year, Boris, you can focus on this.
Yeah.
You come back to Wimbledon at 18, win again.
Yeah.
At this point, you're thinking to yourself, I got this thing wrapped up for 10 years.
Well, for me, the defense was bigger than the first one around, because you can imagine in these 12 months in between, everybody and their mother thought that was the flash in the pan, the famous 15 minutes. It was impossible to win at 17. It will be definitely impossible to defend at 18 because I still would have been the youngest. So everybody doubted, including my coaches and my friends, and they prepared me already. Don't be too upset. I said, hold on, let me play.
Okay, that's not what you want to hear from your coaches and friends.
That's not what you want to hear. So
but this is a unique situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was then that I, you know, talked to my coaches and listen, guys. I mean, let me just do my own thing now. Let me, you know, you can come to the matches and you help me organize the car and everything, but let me just be me. And then after the tournament's over, I would listen to you again. And you know, next thing you know, I win the match. I play well. I'm in the quarterfinal, semifinal, and then you in my case, I went on to defend it, and so ever since that moment, I trust in myself.
Okay.
If things get rough, I concentrate. I try to focus on what's the next thing. The task at hand. What do I have to do to be better and to get better? And that really cemented itself, winning at 18 again, because that was maybe for the first and last time that I felt pressure. And you talk to people, look at people, and they give you these looks of, yeah, come on. It was impossible last year, but it's certainly, you won't do it again. So there's nobody that believes in you.
That's tricky.
Yeah.
But then once you know you do it on your own and you're successful, you never doubt yourself again.
You never doubt yourself, yes.
It's powerful.
Yes.
Why Wimbledon? Why is it such a fairy tale for you?
It was the only tournament worldwide that was always televised in Germany. And young Boris, growing up in West Germany, loving the game of tennis, wanted to watch a tennis match. And the Wimbledon tournament was always televised on ARD, or ZDF, which are the BBC One, BBC Two, one of the two largest channels back in the day. And then on Sunday afternoon, on Friday, whenever the matches were, young Boris was sitting there with his parents and his sister and would watch the likes of Borg and McEnroe win the tournament. So my dream started then, saying one day I want to win this tournament.
And what's it like to go there for people that never been? And what's it like to spend 2 weeks there as well? That's a different thing. But what's magical about it? Because I've been in it. There's something special about that place.
If you like tennis, it's sort of the holy church. People talk differently, they look differently. The whole place is not commercialized yet, or in a way that it doesn't come across. Of course, they have the sponsors, but the colors green and violet, stronger form of pink, is there. It's been around for 150 years.
Yeah.
It's the oldest tennis tournament in the world. It's probably the most famous because of it. They have their own rules. They're different to all the other tournaments.
Okay.
And it's compared to the Masters, which is this week. It's sort of the Augusta in tennis. If you call it, with other sports, it's the World Cup of tennis. Fortunately, it happens every year, but it's a life-changing experience once you get to the chance to play it, and luckily to win it. You can be US Open champion, it's amazing, and a French Open champion, and even number one in the world. You're a Wimbledon champion, you're in a different club. It is true.
It is true.
Yeah.
And it is very British, I would say, if you want to get a good feel in a way that's maybe hard to describe what is the best of British, go there. It feels different. Like you said, you see, I think, 3 sponsors, barely. You see a few logos.
Yeah.
Everything is done, right. Everything is done well.
Well, they have gone with the times, meaning they, of course, they have changed the club now, the locker room. There's a new center, new roof on court number 1. They have adapted with the time without selling themselves out. And that's difficult because I'm sure they have offers left, right, and center. So they, in order to stay within the times, you have to adapt to it a little bit, but on your own terms. And I think they found the golden middle of doing that. I mean, just look at the Royal Box. There are a lot of Royal Boxes or wannabe Royal Boxes in sports. Look at the Royal Box on a Wimbledon final in Wimbledon. It's unique. I mean, it's the ticket you want to be. Now, can you buy this ticket? No. Can you give this ticket to somebody else? No. So you can ask, if you get the pleasure of being invited, who are you coming with? You can't come with your spouse or your partner. It has to be your wife. And then if she has had the flu on the Sunday morning, you can't give this ticket to your child or to your sister. It's just you then. Those are the rules.
Beautiful rules, huh?
I have friends that say, Boris, any amount. So I go to the committee and to the members and the chairman. I said, well, we know Boris, but I have to tell my friend that at least I went to you and asked you. He would offer you, I don't know what, for the charity you want. I said, this ticket is not for sale. And he means it.
It's a beautiful thing, huh?
I think so.
All right, so take me back. You've now won twice, defended your title. You go back at 19. What does the world see? And how is Boris different than at 18?
When you had this question before, you said, obviously, including me, I thought I have this now for years to come. And that was obviously a foolish mistake because nobody wins it all the time. And then the very following year, at 19, I had a pretty good year in between. I lose to in the second round to an Australian called Peter Doohan, a journeyman, a qualifier on court number one, and that was that. And of course I was upset, and of course I didn't play well, and things didn't work out. And I remember I was going to the press conference after, and then a big look from all the journalists, and what happened? What went wrong? And I went, well, I lost a tennis match. Nobody died. Peter was better on the day. That's it. Yeah, how is it possible? And you're defending champion, you're supposed to win it for 5 years. I said, you're absolutely right, but I wasn't good enough today. What can I tell you? I lost a match. Nobody died. Didn't lose the war. I lost a tennis match. And I think that was equally important to me than defending at 18, because it puts everything in perspective. It puts my performances in perspective. It puts the sport, tennis, winning and losing in perspective, and that helps along the way of saying sometimes even you, Boris Becker, lose at Wimbledon. Welcome to the club. You're human. You're a man. You're not always perfect.
That's tennis.
It's tennis, maybe life. It's just it's just a message for everybody out there, is that you're not always perfect. People make mistakes. You always meet somebody that's a little bit better on the day. That doesn't mean that you're not good. It's just that somebody was a bit better, and it's just part of life. And I think I learned this lesson early. I think it prolonged my career as well. If you all the time win, you get, you're thinking about what's the next goal, because I've been winning already everything. So the reason I did play until I was, in my 30s, was because I didn't win everything after that.
It's a good perspective. Most people that are so intense about something also take it so hard, and that can ruin them. And I think it's a rare combination. It makes for great tennis players and maybe great life players.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fine line. Of course, you want to give everything, and of course, you want to win. But even that you have to see in perspective. You have to. Michael Jordan was asked the question. How can you? How do you know that you're going to hit another 50 points tomorrow? He said, I don't, because I can't chase the game. If you chase the game, you lose. The game has to come within, and they have nights that score 50 points and nights that score 15, because it's just the way it is. And the same thing I look at tennis. You can't always play perfect. You have to play good enough to survive the match to get to the next day.
You mentioned learning some great new English language phrases from Mr. John McEnroe. You had an epic battle with him at the Davis Cup, and there was a lot on the line there, because you're defending your country in the Davis Cup. You're playing in New York City against John McEnroe. And now these days, most people know John from commentating as you as well, but back then it was a different John. What was it like to play someone like him, and how would you describe John back then to someone who doesn't know?
Well, John McEnroe was one of the most talented players of all time, very, very successful in his own right, with a very unique style. But mostly he was known for his temperament. Back in the day, he didn't have the microphones on the court. And players actually still talk to the umpires in their own kind of way. And even to the other players sometimes. So John was very verbal with him and everybody around him. And that was his trademark, and that was his intimidation factor in a way, and so he got fined a lot. He did lose a match because he couldn't finish it. He was fined by the umpire because of foul language or obscenity or whatever it was called then, but that was his thing. People forgave him because of the quality of his play, and it did settle down at the end of his career. He became a bit calmer. But, he's a New Yorker. He was born and raised in Manhattan. You ever been there, you know what they're like. So he was a typical New Yorker, and he lived it out on a tennis court. And obviously he had a great second career. I call him the best commentator in tennis because of his unique way of talking and looking at a tennis match, and also of expressing himself. He speaks, almost. Obviously the language is a bit better, but almost the way he spoke on the tennis court. And I think that's what people like about it. He's real. He says it how it is. And nowadays, a lot of people, in this PC world we live in, and nobody can really say it was a double fault. They say, well, the second serve wasn't as good as yesterday. No, it was a I was going to use another word for it, double fault. So I think that's his quality, and I think that people enjoy listening to him.
It's also very un-tennis. I mean, when he came to Wimbledon, everyone was cringing. And so in a weird way, it's kind of not what you were used to, because very few opponents would do that kind of thing.
Yeah, tennis was and is always a very classy sport, with you have to play within the rules. Well, he broke the rules every time he played the match. But what could you do? He was the number 1 player in the world for quite a long time. So you have to embrace him for it. Yes, it took him a while to be a member of Queens, and even Wimbledon struggled with accepting him. But eventually they did, because he was just so good and so unique. And but if I think nowadays, if there's anybody similar to him, and I don't find anybody, because it was a lefty, the way he played, and the touch, and the serve, and the attitude, and the his whole personality was so unique, and that's why he stands out.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.